Now, what I'm going to say to you today comes from these words right along with this song that you just sang. From the 2nd chapter of Matthew. Remember, Matthew never leaves anything out. He is the premier teacher of the New Testament. He's the teacher. And he says, I quote, "And you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are not least among the ruling cities of Judah. For a ruler will come from you, a ruler will come from you, who will be the shepherd for my people Israel," from the NLT version and the New King James Version. He will become the shepherd. And it is about that coming of the King for Christmas that I want to talk to you a few minutes. I thank you. You can be seated. This is Advent week, and we are the second Sunday in the 4 preceding Sundays before Christmas. One is for peace last week. This one's for love this week. Normally, a candle would be lit, one for each Sunday, until that Christmas day comes. And so I thought that I would look and see what Advent really meant, because we say this is Advent Day, and sometimes we say it and we don't even think what it is. Advent actually means, from Merriam-Webster dictionary, the coming and preparing for something that is coming. The advent of a new day is coming. The advent of Christmas is coming. The advent of Easter is coming. Those things are on the way. And when you come to the 28th, as it was this time, of November, that was the first Sunday in Advent. And the second Sunday is today, which I believe is the 5th, I think, something like that. And then you'll have the 12th, and then the 19th, and then the next Sunday, the next day, will be Christmas Day, which is the 24th, 25th, 4 Sundays before. It means that preparations are being made for the coming. Now, we are doing that, aren't we? We are putting our candles out. We are streaming the garland around the doors. We are putting the beautiful things around the church, which all of them are good. Nothing would be disparaging that I'm saying. We are getting the Christmas trees, those that are well lit, those that are not lit, and we are decorating them with all kinds of tinsel and lights, red lights, blue lights, green lights, yellow lights, white lights, according to what you like. You're setting out the little deer named, we gave ours a little name, and it moves its head like this, her head, and his name is Bambi. Bambi's about seen his day at our house. He's fallen so many times and has duct tape all over his legs so he won't fall like that. We get out all of the presents and we draw names and we say, you buy me this and I'm going to buy you something that's commensurate to that, and we get ourselves ready for Christmas. In a more spiritual way, we get our plays and our pageants and our Christmas things done from the children and from the adults. We get all the bands struck up so that we can have Christmas is coming. The Advent is here. We are 2 weeks into it and 2 to go before the Christmas day really comes. Have you ever thought about the advent of the king that came to Bethlehem 2,000 years ago, to the little city that was hidden out, that was not the least of these, a city, little town, quiet, easy, called, you call it Bethlehem. It's really Bethlehem if you go there. It means a house of bread. And no one knew it until it began to happen, and the Advent started making a way for it. But God knew about it, and he planned it many days and years and centuries and millennia in advance, until that day came when the King was born. I've asked the question many times, and I remember the choir and the group from the players years ago sang the song, boom, boom, boom. I can hear Steve on the drums now. How shall the King come? And I picked up on that this week in my mind. Some of it's left, believe it or not. George Beverly Shea may not be left, but I remember a lot of things. And I thought, how shall a king come? What do you expect when you see a king coming to take over a kingdom? Immediately, I thought about the Roman soldiers when the emperor would come riding in on a white stallion with his tail swishing and a long white mane and all the bells and everything, ribbons on the horse, and then behind him were all the subjects that he'd captured. And he walks into a town and they clap for him and they say, "Long live the emperor, Julius Caesar, Augustus Caesar." I think that's the way a king comes. So then I got carried away with watching some of the things on Netflix. I did watch that. If you have any harm with it, don't worry about it. I watched about Queen Elizabeth. I love stories of the king. I love stories of the great monarchs that lived. And many tales and stories are out there about them. I love Churchill. I love the English literature. I love a lot of things about England, and have been there to watch the thing change, and it is quite a thing to see it from day to day, but I've never been there for a parade, but I decided that I would look it up and research it. And I found that when the Queen, just for a birthday, and they get ready to, I call it to trump the colors, and they did it one year when he went, but when they get ready to do that, it's quite a procession and nothing like I've ever seen before. A careful looking at it from an encyclopedia or from Googling it or DuckDuckGoing it, you probably could understand it, but I hope you won't do it right now. Let me tell you about it. In that thing on that birthday, she's decked out. They are ready to go to a birthday party. 1,400 soldiers go ahead of her with the guns up like this, marching in step. There are 200 soldiers that go before them on horses, and many of them, those big white horses, signifying emperorship and kingship and lordship. There are 10 military bands that go in the procession on the streets of London that day. 10 bands. And you say, how many were there? 200 members of those bands were present to march down the streets in front of Trafalgar and right on over to the Capitol where they would have the birthday party. An officer who was in charge of all of the military would bark out in sequence, one after another, some commands, totaling 113 commands for them to say before they ever sang happy birthday to the Queen. But don't forget the Queen. She's the emperor. She's the head of it all. She's the Lord of it all. And there she is sitting in the chariot. It's all decked out. Nothing's thrown together like they'd have on Gunsmoke or Bonanza. I mean, it was something else. And to see her is something else. She had on the white, silvery, laid with gold cloak, and on it was a crown that went back to the 16th century, presented by one of the greatest kings who ever lived. And that crown is still there, so every time they redo it or they coronate or when they do something special, that crown is something that she's wearing. And they say, "Long live the Queen! Long live the Queen!" And they say it over and over again in unison, in obeisance to that Queen. And I thought back and I said, is that the way a king comes? I know the story 2,000 years ago of the shepherd fields, and not many musicians were there that anyone could see. But I've read of the night and heard it spoken, preached, and taught of the night that the truest king that ever hit this universe lived and was born and came to tabernacle among the people. His name was, as Ricky sang, Emmanuel. God is with us. Not way out yonder, not for himself, but came to live, to be for, and to die, so that they would not have to die alone and they would never be lost. That was the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. You laid aside all of the pomp and all of the ceremony and the splendor of this earth and took on yourself the form of a man, a human being, who thought it not robbery to be equal with God, but became like every one of us, to feel, to touch, to sympathize, to ache, to cry, to shed tears, to shed laughter, and to pledge his very best to his people. He came not to be one who was riding a white horse. He came to ride on a lowly donkey into the city so that folks would say, "Where's a king? And where's a king? Kings don't ride donkeys." But this king did. Where's his nice robe? He's got on something similar to what he was born in 30 years before, when he was laid in swaddling clothes and laid in a manger and laid on that mama's breast. He looks just like him again, full of splendor of God. And nobody is there to bark out orders. But at that birth, when he stepped onto the scene, there was somebody in heaven who stood up and said, "Behold, I tell you about a king who is born this day in the city of David, a Savior who is Christ the Lord. And this shall be a sign unto you. You will find the babe wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger." And they hurried with haste and found Mary and Joseph, and the little baby was lying in the manger. And there around that manger were his new friends, just some simple peasants, shepherds who didn't know any catechism, shepherds who'd never been on a board, shepherds who'd probably never even been to the temple, shepherds who didn't know A to Z about anything in the line of God's work. He chose some like that to come to. And around him were his little friends, the animals. Not a puppy or not a cat this time. They could have been there, I'm sure, and he would have loved them. But around him you found his new friends. They were goats. They were cows. They were sheep. And especially the sheep were there because the sheep is what he got acquainted with. He came to be as David was, who shepherded his people. and whom the Lord said right here in the prophecy. He came to be not just an ordinary king. He came to be a king, but he came to be a shepherd king. And if you're a shepherd king, you've got to have something to run over. You've got to have to lead. And that was the little sheep that were all around him. Oh, we think they were so sweet. And we can take the little sheep up like Jesus did, put him around his neck like that on his shoulders. And he smelled so good and clean. He had manure all over his fleece. He had cockleberries all over him. He had parasites all around him. He had all these things that invaded sheep because they can't defend themselves. They're pitiful, helpless little animals that can't fight for themselves at all. He came and he said, I want to choose the least of all the animals. I want to choose the sheep. I want to be the Lord and the shepherd of these sheep. And looking beyond all of that, with his spiritual heart and eye, he saw you at the Northwood Temple Church on this December the 5th, 2021, hurting, needing a shepherd. Sometimes clean. Most times, most of us are cankered down with the world, with all of it in our skin and in our hearts and around our minds and our being, so that if we had to say that we were holy, we would look at somebody and say, don't call me holy because I'm not righteous. And that's the reason none of us feel righteous today, because actually none of us is righteous. Only Christ is righteous. And we are made righteous because he is our righteousness and he lives on the inside of us. It was that shepherd king who stepped out to say, I'm the shepherd of these sheep. And I know why I've come. I've come because all of this Old Testament was laden down with fear, so many fears. And when we get to the future and we get to 2021, most of the people are going to be laden down with fears, with 7.5 probably of all the phobias: afraid of thunder, afraid of lightning, afraid of cats, afraid of dogs, afraid of the water, afraid of high places, afraid of closed-in places. We've all got some of those things. And on the scene a few years later came a young man named Timothy. He wasn't boisterous like some of us, but Paul looked at him and he said, Timothy, I want to tell you. He said it. Read it in 2 Timothy, I think. He said, God has not called you to give you the spirit of timidity and cowardice and weakness and fear, but he's called you to have the spirit of strength and courage. And you have it on the inside of you, and nothing will by any means harm you nor destroy you, because you do not have just you, Timothy. You have me. I am walking with you and fighting with you, and every battle you come to, they are not yours only, they are my battle. And he's saying that to you here today. You've come with a spirit of fear and you're afraid today. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. The Lord is watching after you. The Lord has it all under control. He knew about the fear of those sheep because he knew David. David knew about them. No wonder you heard David writing, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Listen to what he says. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. And a cursory glance looking back on their lives and on David's ministry and on the sheep, you'll find that those sheep, the only ones in the animal kingdom, practically like big animals, that can't defend themselves. I did find out that all they could do was butt. Now, I've had plenty of church members in my church that would say butt. They had the big butt covenant. I don't mean what we carry either. I mean the butt. Butt am I in the way. Or we had the butt covenant where we say, I could do that but. I could be a strong servant but. I could sing the song but. I could be in the play but. I could really give but. We got the butt problem. You know that. And that's what the sheep's got. And they butt them away from the trough and butt little ones and butt those that were more cowardly than they were. But they had the fear syndrome, so that anything scared them. A streak of lightning, a sound of thunder, a hipping, hooping hail, or did I get that from some other place? Look, they were afraid of the shadow. And a little tiny mongrel dog this big, like this right here, could bark and send those sheep into a stampede, and one of them gets started and the others will run and run completely over the cliff and die. And mama sheep who are pregnant with that little sheep that they're carrying will forget about that little sheep, little lamb on the inside, and drop that little sheep, that little lamb on the wayside to run for her life. But there is someone who knows about it, and he is the good shepherd. He's the one who watches over us. He's the one who knows about all those 7.5 fears that you've got. He's the one who knows what you're up against. He's the one that knows about a coyote coming. Why do you think David said to Goliath, I killed a bear and a lion? You think he just goes around looking for bears and lions? Because they are predators. I'm sure he killed some other things too. You say he didn't have a gun. No, he had a sling. I didn't say a slingshot, one of those things like this. That's a slingshot. That's a BB gun. I'm talking about this one. It whirs. I've watched them hit it, and they can hit it right between the eyes if they want to. David carried that. And just when those sheep were there and they heard a predator coming, they could sense the stealthy feet of a predator coming, a lion or a bear or a coyote coming their way. We're going to die. We can't do anything because we don't have any defense about us except one thing. They knew how to run. They were much like Forrest Gump with that plaid shirt on that all he could do was run from those guys that were throwing stones at him. You remember it, don't you? I've seen it a dozen times or more. Run, sheep, run. But this time, when the sound comes at them, and they feel that they're going to be destroyed, saliva's already running out of a wolf's mouth. They sense the sound of the legs coming through the field. It's the legs of the shepherd that they know from everybody else and everything else. And when something is about to pounce on them, they hear another sound. It's a whirring. And when they hear the whirring of the sling, they say, no need to worry anymore. Let's lay down and take a nap. And you'll find when you study them, that's the only way that sheep will ever lie down. One of two ways. And that is, when fear is gone, they will not lie down because it's too hard to get up. The other time is when they're cast and they lie down on their back and cannot get up and their 4 feet stick straight up while they're cast down, thrown down. Oh, my soul, David said in Psalm something 42, I believe, one of those. And that little sheep knows that Daddy Rabbit is on the way. The boss is coming. The Lord is coming. The Lord of my flock is coming. He's there to protect. He's there to give peace. And we all know that there is no peace among them unless there's peace within that man that's on the way. He never scowls. He never gets mad. He never blows up. He never thinks of himself. But if it's 2 a.m. and he hears the sound of a coyote or a wolf howling or the roar of a bear, he's ready even right now in the sheep raising places around the world. He's got a musket, he's got a gun, a rifle right there by his bed, and he grabs it and he says to the dog, hey, Rex, let's go. And out they go. And he's ready to end it for them that are coming against the sheep. What I'm trying to tell you, and I wish I had more time, is to tell you that here we are. A shepherd king has come. Why do you think God said a shepherd king? He could have said a mighty king. He could have said the greatest gold-laden king. He could have said the emperor of the ages. He didn't say anything of the kind. He said, he is your shepherd king. Why do you think he said David was a man after God's own heart? It's because David went back and didn't rule his people with an iron hand. He ruled them with a shepherd's love and would give his life for them. And when someone told about their king in another kingdom, what's my king like over here outside of Israel? He's tough. He's strong. You go against him, he's got you. He'll cut your throat. Everybody's afraid of him. Everybody does this with him. What? Isn't that the way your king is over here in Israel? What's your king like? I'm not real sure exactly what you'd even say about what's it like. He cries a lot. He cries. I wouldn't serve a namby-pamby that cries. He cries a lot. We don't even know what makes him cry. Well, he commands you to do something. Oh, no. I can't remember when he ever commanded us. The last time he commanded us to do anything except something good. Well, how does he get it done? We don't know. We just do it. And he doesn't even have to ask us. That's the shepherd king that God has given to you and me. And he didn't prove himself with a white horse and a gold-laden chariot and 400 men walking in unison and so many choirs and orchestras and bands coming along, dancing and singing, and so many great orders given out by anybody. But he came to say, he came unto his own, and his own received him not. He came because he loved. In that first chapter of John, John sums it up better than anybody. He said, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father. Listen, not full of power and dignity and pomp and all that stuff, full of grace and truth. Well, it's nice sounding, John, but you weren't there with me when they came out to us from the room and said he's got COVID-19 and he's got to go on a ventilator. If you'd have been there, you wouldn't be talking like this. Really? Or if you'd have heard them say, my husband has pancreatic cancer, you wouldn't be talking like this. Or my mate has liver cancer. Or this one, we have a child that's run away. It doesn't care anything about it anymore, about the family or God or anybody. If you'd have been there that night, John, that my husband looked at me and said, I'm going and I'm never coming back. And he left me 12 years ago. And he's never shown up again. Or John, if you could have been with me the night that my wife looked at me in your office and said to me, I don't love you. You said, John, you're mad. Are you sure these things happen? I'm telling you, listen to me. In front of me, a woman to her husband, I don't love you. And put a comma and his name. Now let's put yourself in it. And she said, I have never loved you. And she walked out of that office right here and never came back. John, if you'd have been there, I was there. But if it had been you and Faye had done that to you, you would never say what you did about a shepherd king. I say this to you. I know after being here a long time that many of you have problems. I have problems. Many of you have had setbacks, things that didn't go right, sicknesses. You know I know that. We've been able to stand together. Listen, can you imagine how many times I've gotten the last look? Can you imagine this? In a person's face. I've counted them almost, listen, and over these 53 years now, more than 1,000 I've looked at, as I did Frank right here Friday, and looked at him in a pinstripe suit with a blue shirt and a red tie and wavy hair. God, that man was handsome. 88 years old, 86 years old. And I said, Ricky Escott, Frank. It's been my custom to say it. And in the Latin, Ricky Escott. And you who took the Latin know that I mean rest in peace. You'll see it on tomb markers everywhere. Ricky Escott. It's just what I say. Rest in peace. Your body. But you have a high-flying instrument 450 million light years away from here where Jesus has prepared a place for you. And finally, listen to me. Every one of us on every pew, you may be just one on the pew. You may be two. You may be four. You may be in the cars. You may be in your house. Every one of us has, at one time or another, our little cup of sorrow in a small teacup or in a big McDonald cup or in a bowl for some of you lately, served out to us. I've seen it with your husband. I've seen it with your folks. I saw it with your father. I saw it with your aunt, my sister. I saw it with our niece, our nephew. I saw it with sister. I saw it with three brothers. Make that four brothers. Three half-brothers from Dad's first marriage many years ago. They were older to be my father. Believe it or not, somebody can be that old. And then one brother, I have one left. He cannot think of anybody's name. He can think of George Beverly Shade. But he can remember one in particular. When he sees me or when he's with somebody, he says, I want to tell you about, now it really touches me. And today he's listening. Right now he said, I want to tell you about my brother. His name is Johnny. Now, that's what I am to them, okay? Now, you can call me anything you want to, I don't care. I used to care, but I don't care anymore. Just don't call me late for dinner, okay? He said, and he's got the most beautiful church that you have ever seen. That's what he says. He doesn't even know his wife sitting right there. She's a jewel. He's alive because of her. She's a CPA, and she makes sure that everything is canceled out right and does everything right. Francis is something. Look, we all have our sorrows. I've seen your sorrows, great man. I've seen you right here. I've seen some sorrows, haven't we? We've been through some things all around. We've been your brother recently, remember? And look, all around. We could go down every pew, and we could see that all of us have our sorrows. It's not just private to us. And now they come on the air and say more variant. I believe it's called more scariant than it is variant. We got more things coming, more things there, and we hear of another dying, and we see of a church that's shut down street here, and we hear of one of them dying just this week, and we hear of another one. What I'm saying is that we've all got our cups of sorrow that are served to us throughout the years, over the years. And when it comes, know that God is with you as a shepherd king. She was distraught. She didn't think she could make it. She went off to live at the beach in privacy, where she prayed and read and took walks along the beach. Not thinking she's ever going to make it, she walked the beach one day and she saw 2 footprints in front of her, just like this. 2 sets of footprints, 2 pairs. Then when she got off the beach and went up to get to the hilly part and got where it was hard and grassy and glassy and everything else, all of a sudden there was only 1 set of footprints. When she got home, she cried out to God and said, Lord, why is it that when the walking was real easy on the beach and on the sand, you walked along beside me? Then when we got to where the going got really rough, like I've been in lately for the last 3 months, I don't see but 1 set of footprints, Lord. Why is that? Have you left me, God? He said, you missed the whole thing, my darling. He said, when you were walking, taking it easy, I walked beside you, together with you. But when we got to the place where you couldn't make it, where the going got rough, I picked you up and carried you. Some of you need picking up and carrying today. Some of you haven't been carried well in a long time. But I want to tell you something. Not a day goes by that somebody on this staff and in this church doesn't pray for you. Any one of you that I know personally, you're going to get prayed for. You say, how do you pray for that many people on a newsletter? You take it like this. Well, here's one. I did not plan it this way. But here they are. Look at, and it's bigger than that now. And you go right down the line and say, Lord, I want you to touch Miss Jerry Anderson today. And you pray there for her. You say, but I ain't got time to do that. Take 1 row of them now and 1 row later. And pray one for another. It's not here just so that you can say, they got us sick. It's here so that you can get a hold of God for them. And you pick out somebody that's real sick, like Marie Bullard. And you say, God, touch Marie today with that fracture that she's got. And Lord, touch Joanne Denton today, Lord, with her eyes like this. And Lord, touch Barbara Morgan, Lord, I pray. Give her victory. And Lord, touch Anita Spiller. Touch Tommy. Lord, touch Griselle Vega and Kay Wilburn, whose leg is still bleeding. Lord, touch Teddy Williams, who loved this church, and an idiot ran across him on Maxwell Road, and it's been several years now and he still can't walk. I could break your heart if I told you what they did for the church in their decrepit, broken condition. Ted Williams and Angelina, I think her name is. And Lord, touch Carolyn Grant, who's undergoing surgery today, or has undergone surgery for, open heart surgery. The stents were old. Lord, touch Linwood Montague, who sees out of this side of his left eye and out of this side of his right eye only from a apparent stroke while he was having an MRI, and they wouldn't check it to make sure it was stroke. They just said, no, it's only the dye. And if you go over a few days, it's too late to give the aspirin or whatever. You know that, don't you? A lot of us have got problems. I want to tell you this. The Shepherd King is coming at Christmas. And when he comes, when Christmas Day comes this year, instead of you singing, oh, jolly, 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 deck the halls with balls of holly and all that stuff, listen, I want you to say, the Shepherd King is here. It's the Shepherd King's birthday. Hallelujah. Let's stand, and would you stand with me and give honor to him, the Shepherd King. Come on. All around, in the cars, in your home. Shepherd King is alive.